The roast turkey sat untouched between us. My mother's fork clattered against her plate, the sound sharp enough to silence 20 people mid-laugh. "You're greedy, Kara," she said, her voice cutting through the Christmas music like broken glass. "Always taking, never giving back." Around the table, my relatives shifted in their seats, eyes dropping to their laps. My brother smirked into his wine glass. My father studied the ceiling. Nobody asked what I'd given. Nobody knew I'd been paying the property taxes on this house for 3 years straight, keeping the roof over their heads while my mother bragged online about saving the family home herself. That night, something inside me didn't break. It finally woke up. Welcome to Revenge with Precious, where we share real stories of betrayal, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself. These are tales of people who refused to stay silent, who drew boundaries when love turned toxic, and who chose their peace over family obligation. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, these stories are for you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see your own life. Please, watch till the end. Let's get started. The dining room glowed with candlelight, silver platters reflecting faces I'd known my whole life. Aunts, uncles, cousins crammed around the extended table, their laughter filling the space like it always did on Christmas Eve. I sat near the corner, fork halfway to my mouth, when my mother's voice sliced through the warmth. "You're so selfish, Kara." The room went silent. Someone's glass paused mid-air. The Christmas playlist kept playing something about joy and peace, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. She didn't look at me. She stared at her plate, cutting her turkey with slow, deliberate movements. "Always thinking about yourself. Never about family." My brother Trevor leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. My father cleared his throat, shifted his napkin, said nothing. I wanted to speak. My lips parted, but no sound came. Under the table, my hands gripped my knees so tight my knuckles went white. The gifts I'd brought sat unopened beneath the tree. 3 boxes wrapped in silver paper, each one chosen carefully, paid for with money I'd saved from overtime shifts. My mother hadn't even glanced at them when I arrived. Aunt Sheila forced a laugh, trying to restart the conversation. "So Trevor, how's the new job?" Trevor launched into a story, and the room exhaled, grateful for the distraction. But my mother's words hung in the air above me, heavy and cold. I forced myself to swallow the bite of food in my mouth. It tasted like ash. "My name is Kara Sullivan, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown, the kind of job where you arrive before sunrise and leave after dark. I don't complain. Numbers make sense to me in a way people never have. For the last 6 years, I've been sending money home. Every month, like clockwork. 500 here, 800 there, sometimes more when emergencies hit. And they always hit. It started small. My parents owned a hardware store on the edge of town, the kind of place that used to thrive before the big chains moved in. When business slowed, my mother called. "Just until we catch up, sweetheart. You know how tight things are." I sent the money. I always sent the money. Then came the pandemic. Their store shut down for months. Bills piled up. Property taxes went unpaid. The county sent notices, warnings, threats of foreclosure. My mother called me in tears. "We're going to lose the house, Kara. Everything we built." So I paid the taxes. All of them. $18,000 drained from my savings in one transfer, money I'd been setting aside for a down payment on my own place. I never told them the full amount. I just said I'd help sort it out. My mother thanked me, her voice thick with relief, and promised they'd pay me back when things turned around. They never did. But every month, she posted on Facebook about how she and Dad had fought through the hard times and saved the family home. I scrolled past those posts, stomach churning, and said nothing. Christmas had always been my mother's stage. She cooked for days, decorated every corner, invited everyone she knew. It was her moment to shine, to prove that our family was still strong, still together, still perfect. This year felt different from the moment I walked through the door. My mother greeted me with a quick hug, already distracted, already moving toward the kitchen. "Your brother's here already. Go say hi." Trevor sat in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up when I entered. "Hey, Kara. Still working yourself to death?" I smiled tightly. "Someone has to." He snorted. "Yeah, well, some of us know how to enjoy life." I didn't respond. Trevor had been unemployed for most of the year, living rent-free in the apartment above my parents' garage. But he was the favorite. He always had been. Dinner was cold, and we gathered around the table. My mother placed the turkey in the center with a flourish, beaming as everyone applauded. She raised her glass. To family. To making it through another year together. Everyone clinked glasses. I sipped my wine and tasted bitterness. Then came the moment. My mother's fork hitting her plate. Her voice, loud and clear. "You're greedy, Kara." The room froze. She continued, eyes still on her food. "Some people forget who raised them, who sacrificed for them." My chest tightened. I wanted to vanish, to disappear into the floor. Instead, I set my fork down gently and stood. Nobody looked at me. I walked to the door, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the cold night. Behind me, the voices resumed, quieter now, uncertain. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked to my car. My breath came out in white clouds, and my hands shook as I fumbled with my keys. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The anger was too sharp, too hot. I drove home in silence, the Christmas lights blurring past my windows. My apartment was dark and cold when I arrived. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I just sat on the couch, staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Sheila. "You okay, hon?" I didn't reply. Another buzz. "Trevor. Mom's upset. You shouldn't have walked out." I turned the phone face down. Hours passed. The anger cooled into something else. Clarity. I walked to my desk and opened the filing cabinet in the corner. Inside were folders, neatly labeled. Utilities. Taxes. Transfers. Everything organized, everything documented. I pulled out the property tax folder and spread the receipts across my desk. 3 years of payments. All in my name. All from my account. The house my mother called hers. The house she bragged about saving. I'd been the one keeping it standing. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. "Come back. Let's talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I researched. Property tax laws. Ownership rights. Legal precedents. By the time the sun rose, painting my apartment in pale gold light, I understood. In our county, consistent payment of property taxes created a legal claim. If you paid the taxes, you had rights. And I'd been the sole payer for 3 years. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to close the laptop, forget what I'd learned, go back to being invisible. But my mother's voice echoed in my head. Greedy. Selfish. I picked up my phone and called Warren, a colleague from work who specialized in property law. "Kara." His voice was groggy. "It's 7 in the morning." "I know. I need advice." He listened as I explained. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. "If you've been paying the taxes in your name, and your parents haven't, you could file for ownership transfer. It's not common, but it's legal." My stomach twisted. What would that mean for them? They'd lose the house. Unless they bought you out or proved they'd been contributing. I thanked him and hung up. The apartment was too quiet. I made coffee, the machine hissing and gurgling, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About finally balancing the books. Days passed. I didn't call my family. They didn't call me either. The silence felt like a standoff, each side waiting for the other to break. Then, a week after Christmas, an envelope arrived in my mail. County Assessor's Office. I opened it slowly. Inside was a property reassessment notice. The house address. And listed as primary taxpayer, Kara Sullivan. My breath caught. It was official. Documented. The county recognized what my mother never had. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter in my hands, and felt something shift. This wasn't just paperwork. This was proof. That afternoon, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Her name was Claudia Reyes, and her office smelled like old books and lemon polish. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything. The payments. The receipts. The notice. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. You have a strong case. If you want to proceed, we can file for ownership transfer based on tax payment records. What happens then? Your parents will be notified. They'll have the option to contest, but given the documentation, it's unlikely they'd win. My hands trembled. And if they can't pay me back? The house transfers to you. Legally. I nodded slowly. How long? 4 to 6 weeks. I signed the paperwork that day. 2 weeks later, my parents received the letter. I knew because my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on the door at 8 in the evening. I opened it to find her standing there, face flushed, eyes wild. What the hell is this? She waved the letter in my face. It's a legal notice, I said calmly. You're trying to steal our house. I stepped aside. Come in. She stormed past me into the living room. My father followed, quieter, hands in his pockets. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Sit down, I said. My mother didn't sit. She paced, the letter crumpled in her fist. After everything we've done for you. We raised you. Fed you. Put a roof over your head. I know. My voice was steady. And for the last 3 years, I've been putting a roof over yours. She froze. I pulled out the folder from my desk and placed it on the coffee table. Property tax receipts. All in my name. $18,000 in the first year alone. Every payment since then me. Not you. My father finally looked up. His face was pale. My mother's hands shook. We didn't know. You did know. My voice was soft but firm. You knew I was helping. You just didn't ask how much. You didn't want to know. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. You called me greedy, I continued. In front of everyone. You said I never gave back. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't look away. I gave everything, I whispered. They left without another word. My father helped my mother down the stairs, her sobs echoing in the stairwell. I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs shaking. The next day, my phone exploded. Texts from relatives. Some angry. Some confused. Trevor, you're really doing this? Over one comment? Aunt Sheila, there has to be another way, Kara. Cousin Becca, your mom's devastated. How could you? I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded the tax receipts to a group chat my mother had created years ago. Family updates. Every relative was in it. I typed one message, this is what I've been paying. For 3 years. Then I muted the chat. Within an hour, the tone shifted. Some relatives went silent. Others started asking questions. My mother's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. That night, I received a call from my father. His voice was tired. Kara, can we talk? Just you and me. We met at a diner the next morning. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders hunched, his coffee untouched. I didn't know it was that much, he said quietly. Your mother, she handles the finances. I just assumed. You assumed I was lying? My voice was sharper than I intended. He flinched. No. I assumed you were exaggerating. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't pay back $18,000, Dad. He nodded, staring at his hands. We can't afford to lose the house. I know. So what do we do? I met his eyes. You acknowledge the truth. Publicly. My father posted on the family chat that night. Kara has been supporting us for years. We owe her more than we can repay. Whatever happens next, she deserves respect. It wasn't enough. But it was something. The legal process moved forward. My lawyer called with updates. The county verified my payments. My parents' attorney tried to argue they'd contributed in other ways, but there was no documentation. No receipts. No proof. Meanwhile, I discovered something else. While going through old files, I found tax returns from the last 3 years. My parents had been claiming government relief funds, business grants meant for struggling small enterprises. But they'd listed me as a dependent. Used my income to inflate their revenue numbers. Filed documents in my name without my knowledge. I sat in my apartment, the papers spread across my desk, and felt my stomach twist. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was fraud. I called Claudia. I need to report something. She listened, her silence heavy. This is serious, Kara. If you report this, it opens a formal investigation. Your parents could face legal consequences. Fines. Maybe more. My hands shook. What would you do? I'm your lawyer, not your conscience. But I'll say this, fraud doesn't go away. It just waits. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. My mother's voice echoed. Greedy. Selfish. I picked up my phone and forwarded the documents to the county revenue office. 3 weeks later, my parents received notice of an audit. My mother called me, sobbing. Kara, please. They're saying we might owe penalties. We could lose everything. I closed my eyes. You already lost it, Mom. You just didn't notice. Please. You're good with numbers. Help us fix this. I did fix it. That's why the house is still standing. She hung up. The audit took 2 weeks. The findings were clear. My parents had misrepresented income, falsely claimed me as a dependent, and misused relief funds. The penalties were steep. The fraud disqualified them from future assistance. And the house? Ownership transferred to me. Officially. Irrevocably. The notice arrived on a Tuesday. I held the document in my hands, my name printed in bold letters at the top. Sole owner, Kara Sullivan. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in the silence, feeling the weight lift. I didn't move into the house immediately. I hired contractors first. Repainted the walls. Replaced the old furniture. Made it mine. My mother called once during the renovations. Can we at least get our things? Of course. I'm not heartless. She came on a Saturday, my father and Trevor helping her pack boxes. I stayed in the kitchen, watching through the window as they loaded the car. My mother's face was drawn, aged. She looked small. Before they left, she stood at the door. I'm sorry, Kara. For what I said. For everything. I nodded. I know. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. About the years of silence. The unpaid debts. The public humiliation. Maybe someday. But not today. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and left. The house was quiet after they left. I walked through the rooms, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. The dining room where she'd called me greedy. The kitchen where I'd watched her post lies online. The bedroom I'd slept in as a child. It was mine now. All of it. I stood at the window, watching the snow fall softly outside. My phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Sheila. You did what you had to do. I'm proud of you. I smiled for the first time in weeks. That Christmas, I hosted dinner. Just me. A small turkey, a glass of wine, and the silence I'd finally earned. No yelling. No guilt. Just peace. Outside, the lights twinkled on the houses around me. Inside, I whispered to the empty room, Merry Christmas, Kara. And for the first time, I meant it. The new year arrived quietly. I spent January finishing the renovations, choosing paint colors and furniture that felt like mine. The house slowly transformed from a museum of bad memories into something lighter. The dining room became an office. The basement, once cluttered with boxes of my parents' old inventory, was cleared and converted into a reading nook. I started inviting people over. Colleagues from work. Friends I'd neglected while I was busy funding my family. Slowly, the house filled with new laughter, new memories that didn't carry the weight of resentment. Warren came by one evening with a bottle of wine. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set. You look different, he said. Different how? Lighter. I smiled. I feel lighter. He clinked his glass against mine. To new beginnings. To keeping what you earn, I replied. In February, I started a savings account again. This time, the money stayed mine. I watched the balance grow, each deposit a small victory. By March, I'd saved more than I had in the previous 3 years combined. My mother texted occasionally. Short messages. How are you? Or thinking of you. I responded politely but kept my distance. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't mean erasing boundaries. It meant choosing peace over proximity. Trevor, surprisingly, reached out too. We met for coffee one Saturday morning. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his cup. I owe you an apology, he said finally. I raised an eyebrow. For what specifically? For being a jerk. For not seeing what you were doing for all of us. He paused. For enjoying the benefits without asking questions. I studied him. Why now? Because I got a job. Started paying my own rent. And it's hard, Kara. I never realized how hard. He met my eyes. I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you. We didn't become best friends overnight. But it was a start. Small steps towards something that resembled respect. Spring came, bringing green to the yard I now owned. I planted flowers along the walkway, something my mother had never done. Tulips, daffodils, bright splashes of color that felt like declarations. One afternoon, while I was kneeling in the dirt, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Sullivan? This is Officer Brennan from the County Fraud Division. My stomach dropped. Yes. We've completed our investigation into your parents' relief fund claims. I wanted to inform you that they've agreed to a repayment plan to avoid prosecution. They'll be paying back the misused funds over the next 5 years. Relief washed over me. Thank you for letting me know. One more thing. Your report was instrumental in uncovering a larger pattern of fraud. Several other families were caught using similar schemes. You may have prevented significant financial damage. After the call ended, I sat back on my heels, dirt under my fingernails, and felt something I hadn't expected, pride. Not in hurting my parents, but in standing up. In refusing to let wrong be covered by the word family. That evening, I cooked dinner for myself. A simple pasta, a glass of wine, music playing softly in the background. The kitchen that once felt like my mother's domain was now mine. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibility. By summer, I'd settled into a routine. Work during the week, house projects on weekends, and Sunday mornings reserved for myself. I'd started running again, something I'd abandoned years ago when I was too exhausted from double shifts and family obligations. The neighborhood began to feel like home. Mrs. Kapoor next door brought over samosas one evening. I heard what happened, she said gently. You're braver than most. I didn't feel brave. I just felt free. In July, I received a letter from my mother. Not a text, an actual handwritten letter. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Dear Kara, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in ways I'm only beginning to understand. I was wrong to call you greedy. I was wrong about so many things. I spent years believing that because I was your mother, I was entitled to your support. I didn't see it as taking because I convinced myself it was owed. I see now how selfish that was. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not even asking you to forgive. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you sacrificed. And I'm sorry. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe not. For now, it was enough that she'd said it. August brought my birthday. 33. I decided to throw a small party, something I'd never done before. Too expensive, too indulgent, too much attention on me. But this year felt different. I invited a dozen people, mostly coworkers and neighbors. We grilled in the backyard, played cards on the porch, laughed until our sides hurt. Warren stood beside me as the sun set, painting the sky orange and pink. This is a good life, Kara. It is, I agreed. Any regrets? I thought about it. About the confrontation. The legal battle. The severed ties. No, I said finally. I don't regret protecting myself. Later that night, after everyone had left and I was cleaning up, my phone buzzed. A text from Trevor. Happy birthday. I'm proud of who you've become. I smiled and typed back. Thank you. That means more than you know. The house was quiet as I finished wiping down the counters. But it was a different quiet now. Not lonely. Just peaceful. I walked through the rooms, turning off lights, and paused in the dining room. The table where my mother had called me greedy. I'd replaced it with a new one, round instead of rectangular, oak instead of pine. But the memory remained. And that was okay. Because the memory was proof. Proof that I'd survived. Proof that I'd chosen myself. I turned off the last light and went upstairs, the stairs creaking softly under my feet. My bedroom, the one I'd claimed as mine, was painted a soft blue. The window overlooked the street, where streetlights glowed like small moons. I crawled into bed, pulled the blankets up, and closed my eyes. Outside, the world continued. Inside, I was finally home. Fall arrived with the kind of beauty that makes you ache. The trees around the house turned gold and crimson, leaves drifting down to carpet the yard. I raked them into piles on Saturday mornings, the physical work satisfying in a way spreadsheets never were. One October afternoon, I was in the yard when a car pulled up. My mother stepped out. I hadn't seen her since she'd collected her things in the spring. She looked older, thinner. Her hair, once carefully dyed, showed streaks of gray. She stood by the car for a moment, as if gathering courage. "Kara," she said softly. I leaned the rake against a tree. "Mom, can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded toward the porch. We sat on the steps, a careful distance between us. The silence stretched, awkward and heavy. "The house looks beautiful," she said finally. "Thank you." I drove by a few times. Didn't stop. Just wanted to see. I didn't respond. She took a breath. "I got your father to finally talk to a therapist. About everything. Control. Denial. The way we treated you." I looked at her, surprised. "How's that going?" "Slowly. Painfully." She smiled faintly. "He's realizing things. We both are." I picked at a splinter on the step. "What do you want, Mom?" "Nothing." She looked at me, eyes red. "I just wanted to see you. To sit here for a moment and not pretend everything's fine." We sat in silence for a while, watching the leaves fall. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just this. Two people sitting in the truth. "I should go," she said eventually, standing. I stood too. "Okay." She hesitated, then reached out and squeezed my hand. Just once. Then she walked back to her car and drove away. I stood on the porch for a long time after she left, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe, someday, something close to it. Winter returned, bringing the anniversary of that Christmas dinner. I thought about it sometimes, the moment everything changed. The fork hitting the plate. The word greedy echoing through the room. I didn't celebrate the anniversary. But I did acknowledge it. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year later, I hosted a dinner. Not for family. For the people who'd supported me through the chaos. Warren, Mrs. Kapoor, a few colleagues, Trevor. We ate around the new table, laughter filling the house. No one walked on eggshells. No one kept score. It was just people enjoying each other's company. After dinner, Trevor pulled me aside. "Thank you for inviting me." "You're still my brother," I said simply. He nodded, eyes bright. "I know I was awful. I'm trying to be better." "I see that." Later, as I cleaned up, I looked around the house. My house. Built not from inheritance or luck, but from sacrifice and finally, from standing up. I thought about my mother's letter, still in my drawer upstairs. About the visit in October. About the slow, painful work of becoming people who could sit together without pretending. Maybe we'd get there someday. Maybe we wouldn't. Either way, I'd be okay. Spring came again, completing the cycle. 1 full year in the house that was mine. I'd paid every bill, made every decision, built every boundary. And I was still standing. Warren came by on a Saturday with paint samples. "I think the living room could use some color," he said. I laughed. "Are you decorating my house now?" "Someone has to. Everything's so beige." We spent the afternoon painting one wall a deep teal. It was messy and imperfect and exactly right. That evening, we sat on the porch with beers, admiring our work through the window. "You know," Warren said, "when you first told me about all this, I wasn't sure you'd go through with it." "Why not?" "Because standing up to family is hard. Most people can't do it." I thought about that. I didn't have a choice. I was disappearing. "But you didn't disappear. You took up space." I smiled. "Yeah, I guess I did." Later that night, alone in the house, I walked through each room. The office that used to be a dining room of judgment. The kitchen where I cooked for myself now. The bedroom where I slept without guilt pressing on my chest. I ended in the living room, standing before the teal wall. It was bold. Unapologetic. Mine. I pulled out my phone and opened my photos. The album labeled "Before." Pictures of the house as it was. The old furniture. The cluttered corners. The weight of other people's expectations hanging in every frame. Then I opened "After." Light-filled rooms. Clean lines. Space to breathe. I didn't delete the before pictures. They were part of the story. The proof of where I'd started and how far I'd come. That summer, I did something I'd never done before. I took a vacation. A real one. 2 weeks in Colorado, hiking trails and sleeping under stars. I didn't check my work email. I didn't worry about anyone else's bills. I just existed. Present. Free. When I returned, the house welcomed me back. Mrs. Kapoor had watered my plants. Warren had collected my mail. The neighborhood felt like a community I belonged to, not one I was obligated to. I spent the evening unpacking, sorting through mail, settling back into my space. Among the bills and catalogs was another letter from my mother. This one was shorter. "Kara, I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know we're moving. Downsizing to an apartment. It's time. The house was always too big anyway. Your father and I are learning to live smaller. It's not easy, but it's honest. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Mom." I set the letter down and looked around my house. The house I'd saved. The house I'd claimed. The house I'd made into a home. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt settled. That night, I wrote back. My first response to her in over a year. "Mom, I hope the new apartment brings you peace. I'm doing well. I'm happy. Thank you for saying I deserve it. Maybe we can have coffee sometime. Kara." I sealed the envelope and placed it in the outgoing mail. Maybe she'd respond. Maybe we'd have that coffee. Maybe we'd build something new, something honest. Or maybe not. Either way, I'd be okay. Because I'd learned the most important lesson. That protecting yourself isn't greedy. It's necessary. That boundaries aren't walls. They're foundations. And that sometimes, the people who call you selfish are the ones who benefited most from your generosity. Autumn arrived again, marking 2 full years since that Christmas dinner. 2 years since the word greedy had cut through the candlelight and changed everything. I was different now. Not harder, not colder. Just clearer. I knew what I deserved. I knew what I wouldn't accept. And I knew the difference between love and obligation. My mother and I did have that coffee. On a neutral Wednesday afternoon at a cafe halfway between our homes. It was awkward at first, conversation halting and careful. But by the end, we were talking about small things. Her new apartment. My garden. Trevor's promotion. It wasn't deep. It wasn't healing. But it was real. "I'm glad you're doing well," she said as we stood to leave. "I am," I replied. And I meant it. We hugged. Brief, uncertain. Then we went our separate ways. I drove home thinking about forgiveness. How it isn't a switch you flip. It's a garden you tend. Slowly. Carefully. With boundaries like fences and truth like sunlight. Maybe one day, that garden would bloom. Maybe not. But I was done waiting for it. Done putting my life on hold for someone else's redemption. That November, I got a promotion at work. Senior manager. More responsibility, better pay, actual work-life balance. I accepted without hesitation. To celebrate, I threw another dinner party. This time, I invited my mother. She came. Brought wine. Laughed at Warren's jokes. Admired the house she'd once claimed as her own. At the end of the night, as she was leaving, she paused at the door. "You've done something beautiful here, Kara." "Thank you. I mean it. You took something broken and made it yours." She met my eyes. I wish I'd seen that strength sooner. "Me too," I said softly. "But I'm glad I see it now." After she left, I stood in the doorway, watching her taillights disappear down the street. The night was cold, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. I closed the door and locked it. Not to keep anyone out. Just to choose who comes in. The holidays approached again. This time, I wasn't afraid. I made plans. Dinner at my house. Small guest list. People I chose, not people I owed. On Christmas Eve, we gathered around the table. The teal wall glowed in the candlelight. Laughter filled the spaces where judgment used to live. My mother was there. So was Trevor. So were the people who'd helped me build this new life. Warren. Mrs. Kapoor. Claudia, my lawyer who'd become a friend. We raised our glasses. Warren proposed a toast. To Kara. For knowing her worth. To new traditions, Mrs. Kapoor added. To family, Trevor said quietly, looking at me. The kind you choose and the kind you repair. I looked around the table. At faces that saw me. At a house that was mine. At a life I'd built from the ashes of obligation. To freedom, I said. And to keeping what you earn. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed. The food was served, warm and abundant. Later, after everyone had left and I was alone in the quiet house, I stood at the window. Snow had started falling, soft and steady, covering the world in white. I thought about that Christmas 2 years ago. The fork hitting the plate. The word that changed everything. Greedy. I smiled at my reflection in the glass. Maybe I was greedy. Greedy for peace. Greedy for respect. Greedy for a life where I wasn't invisible. And I'd learned that there was nothing wrong with that. That claiming your worth isn't theft. It's survival. I turned from the window and walked through my house. My sanctuary. My achievement. My home. In the dining room, I stopped. The new table gleamed in the moonlight. Empty now, but full of new memories. Good ones. Honest ones. I whispered to the silent room, "Merry Christmas, Kara." And somewhere in the falling snow, I heard the answer. Not from ghosts or guilt. Just from myself. You did it. You're free. The new year brought clarity. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand. Why I'd stayed silent so long. Why I'd equated love with sacrifice. Why I'd believed I had to earn my place in my own family. My therapist, Dr. Chun, was patient. She didn't push. She just asked questions that made me think. "What would have happened if you'd said no earlier?" she asked one session. I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe they would have figured it out themselves. Maybe they would have lost the house. And that would have been their consequence to bear, not yours to prevent. The words settled over me like snow. Soft. True. Undeniable. I'd been trying to save people who hadn't asked to be saved. I'd been solving problems that weren't mine to solve. And in doing so, I'd lost myself. When did you start feeling found again? Dr. Chen asked. I smiled. When I changed the locks. We worked through the guilt. The anger. The grief for the family I'd wanted but never had. It was hard work, painful work. But necessary. By spring, I felt lighter. Not perfect. Not healed. But growing. 2 years turned into 3. The house became more than a symbol. It became home. Real home. The kind where you wake up grateful. Where you make coffee in your pajamas and don't worry about anyone judging you. I dated. Casually at first, then more seriously. Nothing stuck, but that was okay. I was learning what I wanted. What I wouldn't compromise on. What love should feel like. Not like debt, but like choice. My mother and I developed a rhythm. Coffee every few weeks. Phone calls on birthdays. Honest conversations that didn't avoid the past, but didn't live there either. Trevor got engaged. Asked me to be in the wedding. I said yes. We were rebuilding, slowly, honestly. Not ignoring what happened, but acknowledging it and choosing to move forward. One Sunday morning in May, I sat on my porch with coffee and a book. The garden I'd planted was blooming. Tulips, daisies, roses. Colors everywhere. Mrs. Kapoor walked by with her dog. Beautiful garden, Kara. Thank you. It took time. She smiled knowingly. The best things do. After she left, I thought about that. About time. About growth. About the slow work of becoming whole. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Thinking of you. Hope you're having a good day. I smiled and typed back. I am. Hope you are too. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And real was enough. I set my phone down and looked at my house. The house I'd saved. The house I'd claimed. The house that taught me the difference between giving and disappearing. Somewhere inside, in that drawer upstairs, was the letter she'd sent. The apology. The acknowledgement. I kept it not as evidence, but as a marker. Proof that change, however slow, was possible. But I didn't need her validation anymore. I'd found my own. I'd learned that greedy was just another word for self-preservation when spoken by someone who wanted you small. That boundaries were love letters to yourself. That walking away wasn't cruel. It was clarity. The sun climbed higher, warming my skin. Birds sang in the trees I'd planted. The world continued, indifferent and beautiful. And in that moment, sitting on the porch of the home I'd fought for, I felt something I'd spent years chasing. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of choice. The knowledge that I'd stood up. That I'd protected what I built. That I'd finally, truly, kept something for myself. I raised my coffee mug to the empty street. To greedy, I whispered. And to the freedom it gave me. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then the breeze carried them away, and I went back to my book. My coffee. My quiet Sunday morning. In my house. On my porch. In the life I'd earned. Finally, completely mine. Thank you for watching this story. If moments like these resonate with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who couldn't see you, then you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day, real accounts of people who found their voice, set their boundaries, and walked into the life they deserved. Subscribe so you never miss the next upload, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Compliments of the season. I love you all.